All right, so I'm personally pretty excited to be here and share a story. 2018 for our team was pretty intense. I was indoors a lot as we massively changed pretty much every part of what we do to embrace Gatsby in this architecture. So to be out among the people is a nice change of pace. So I'm opening with this statement. Gatsby is a legit game changer for our team, and that really does summarize basically the takeaway from a really intense 2018. And I thought it'd be helpful to go through it as sort of a past, present, future of what life looked like for our agency pre-Gatsby, adopting Gatsby, and then kind of the road ahead as we see it. A little bit about us. We work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, a lot of radio and video broadcasting companies, news media sites, political commentary sites, which that is a pretty charged environment. So we kind of stay pretty low key. It's an interesting space to be in, but a lot of scale issues, a lot of articles, tons of traffic, very strict time to live requirements. Those are some of the challenges that we face day over day. So agency life, BG, before Gatsby. Break down the timeline like this. So 2009 and before were sort of the dark ages, and I was working in Flash, a lot of ASAP and PHP, and obviously you're just kind of basic HTML sites. While I humorously refer to this as the dark ages, there was actually a lot of joy in some of that, and that mainly came from hand coding the HTML, the PHP, just that, sort of OCD control over every layer of it, and felt, simple in a sense. Then 2009 to 2016, that was sort of the renaissance for us, full stack Drupal and WordPress sites. Obviously, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is moving away from Drupal and WordPress. I'm not trying to knock them. They've been powering our business for years, and they still do in decoupled senses now. That was great. What we loved about that was being able to bring editability to clients. What got frustrating about that was wrestling with a lot of the templates and kind of feel like we were fighting the CMS from time to time. We lost some of that custom control we talked about before. Then the age of discovery, as we call it now, static site generators. We loved how easy it was to deploy. The hosting requirements, obviously, were very simple. Scale was very simple. Decoupled CMSs, we really liked that. We were able to stay in Drupal, but get back to getting some of that control. Single page apps we fell in love with for all the performance reasons there, React specifically, component architecture. But we never felt like there was really anything that kind of took the best of all three of those worlds. Like there were static site generators, there was the decoupled model, there was the single page apps, and then there was Gatsby. And there was much rejoicing. So we got a few quotes from some of our team in here, and this one I thought summed it up pretty well. It was the best from the static site generators, the headless CMSs, and single page apps. All of these things combined in Gatsby. And it really is true. You get the confidence of being able to pretty much deploy anywhere, not have to worry about scale. You get to work in React and JavaScript and all those things that were exciting in the headless environment. So we started off at the beginning of 2018. We were working with Gatsby pretty much from the beginning. A lot of stuff was in V1, and we wanted to tackle, an ambitious goal was about half of our slate, see if we could move over to this architecture. And about mid-year, we had so much momentum doing it that it ended up closing out 2018 with pretty much 90% of every site that we run moving over. Really with just a few humongous ones left. That's the 2019 challenge. I was in the WordPress at scale and the large site at scale group actively trying to figure out some of the difficulties there as we await incremental builds. But a little bit about how we kind of approached this. We basically took our entire slate of current projects and then all the work that we knew was coming that year and kind of just lined it up like dominoes of, okay, here's the simplest one all the way to the most complex, and just proved it one by one. Like I said, this was in Gatsby V1. Build times were significantly slower then. There were some other challenges that we were working with. So taking that approach really helped us kind of keep pace with as Gatsby was developing and not get too far ahead. But yeah, there were some growing pains, but got through, like I said, got through about 90%. That brings me to Gatsby and our clients. So pitching this was interesting because we got certainly a lot of resistance along the way. It's a bit easier now, I'm noticing. There's a lot more published on Jamstack, a lot more published on Gatsby. We do a great job with the blog. So we generally prefer to kind of communicate in metaphor. And some clients just inherently get it. Like some clients get decoupled architecture. If you were to, draw it on a line graph, all these, different microservices, some people are like, yeah, I get that. Other people, a kind of monolithic stack is a lot simpler. So the ones that just get it, we don't really have to explain too much. But the ones that are used to kind of the simplicity of a single stack website, they appreciate it for that. So I'm a music junkie. Used to be a DJ, and I gave it up for a much more glamorous life as a coder. So we see it as kind of the boombox metaphor, which WordPress and Drupal we see as sort of the boombox. It's a full stack site. They're great. There's nothing wrong with the boombox. There's times where you specifically need a boombox. They're great at the beach, things like that. But if you wanted to, say, upgrade your tape deck or add a CD player or change out your speakers, you're kind of stuck and you can't really do that. Whereas a Gatsby or Jamstack or content mesh model, we really see as sort of assembling, the sort of perfect modular content setup with Gatsby being at the center as the receiver, and you can have your Contentful, your Google Sheets. And it's interesting, the plugins are called Gatsby source plugins, and we really do, again, seeing that fit the sort of audio metaphor. You add your various content sources as your inputs, and then send out to wherever you want. And what's beautiful about this is, if you were to build a really expensive hi-fi system, you're probably limited by budget. You can't go out and buy like Macintosh or Krell or like the best of the best componentry day one, but you just get your best phonograph and you get a great amp, and then you add in those other pieces as you go. And if you need to swap one out one day, let's say you're a blog poster in WordPress and then you want to move them to Ghost, you're trading one input for another. It's not this massive, massive rebuild like it was if you were to move from, say, WordPress to Drupal full stack. So everyone always talks about choosing the right tool for the job. I mean, we hear that all the time, but I feel like it was that. We were really just choosing between two different boomboxes. Do we want WordPress or do we want Drupal? WordPress was great at blog posts, mediocre at other stuff. I feel like with the content mesh approach, and there's a great blog article on Gatsby.js that I think Sam wrote on the content mesh approach, it now allows us to choose the right tools for the right job. Not all data is best suited by WordPress. Like WordPress is great at blog posts, Shopify is great at products. Maybe there's something that makes sense to be in a Google Sheet or an Airtable. We can pick those individual homes for those pieces of content and tie it all together, really with just installing and configuring a plugin with 1 or 2 lines of code in Gatsby. It's pretty amazing. So with clients, a few kind of gotchas that we did encounter. Time to live with V1, obviously a lot of that got better in V2. We're going to deal with that again this year as we're dealing with some sites of 100,000, 300,000 articles. Interesting challenge. The need for a preview environment. We did a few custom executions of that early last year, but we've been working with Gatsby Preview pretty much since the alpha, and it's amazing. A lot of the publication sites that we use, they really love being able to not just preview the piece of content they're working on, but see it throughout the site in its context. That works really great. If you haven't played with it, definitely do. And the Sanity version of it blew my mind this morning, so it was exciting. Redefining the notion of a static site was another challenge. A lot of people have kind of a pre-configured notion of what that word means. They can't edit it, it doesn't change much. So when we show sites that have a logged-in experience, it's like, well, what do you mean? How is this static? I don't understand. Again, some clients just get it, but others don't, and those are things that we've noticed we've had to repeatedly communicate. Since I gave a version of this talk earlier this year, there have also been a lot of aha moments, the kind of opposite of gotchas that we've been witnessing in 2019. And we really started now pitching the tech stack to clients when we talk about them, and competing against other agencies that are maybe pitching a full stack WordPress site or a full stack Drupal site. We've noticed some really interesting things happening at those pitches. We've gone in where they've never even heard of Jamstack, they don't know any of this stuff, and it's a very long process explaining all the moving parts. But over the course of that, we see people fall in love with the security aspect of it. We see people fall in love, obviously, with what it does to hosting costs. The fact that we're embracing these supported and familiar products like Shopify. And the great thing about embracing these products like that is they're getting their own updates. Shopify continues to grow, and it's keeping up with what it needs to keep up with, and you don't need to have someone maintaining those pieces all of the time. The biggest thing for us was how it was building trust. We're a smaller agency. We do a lot of work for a smaller number of clients, and that trust that we have really is the backbone of our business. And usually that's proven over time and delivering on budget. We're noticing this amazing thing happening when we're pitching clients and they hear this tech stack, it's like, wow, here are these guys coming in with this different approach. They're saying, hey, let's use this service that already exists. Let's use Shopify for that. Let's use WordPress for that. And just in terms of being good stewards with their funds and like using the budget accordingly, we noticed just in the way we're approaching it, they're like, wow, this is great. We're really focusing the custom work on the parts that require, custom dev, and they're embracing these other solutions. And a lot of clients are familiar with some of those products. It's, oh, wait, we can just keep our data in this Airtable sheet, or we can keep this data in our Google sheet, and you can just pull it into the website. That's phenomenal. And as a result, we're seeing ourselves actually winning a lot more bids. There's a current project that I think we're going to move forward on, and our budget came in significantly less than their 3 competing bids. And they loved the Jamstack approach so much. We pitched it, came back a week later, and they said, our whole team's in on it. We're in on it. We're in Gatsby. We love it. We want to do it. We even talked to the other companies that we were bidding with and asked if they could do your approach. And they were, quote unquote, not jazzed about it. And no one's jazzed to build something that they don't know how to do yet. What happened here? And then I think the next line was, we could do it, but it's going to cost a lot more money. I didn't think so. It's exciting. Now a little bit about how it's changed our team internally. Really kind of feels like back to the future for us. All those things that we talked about loving, about having the custom control over our code and our front end, that's back. Themers front end guys are as happy as they've ever been. The local environments and the workflow, just DevOps pretty much out of the box with Gatsby is great. Huge reusability from project to project. We've noticed far more than we were working in Drupal and WordPress full stack. And the other thing that's great is, I think it was during the Harry's talk, they talked about what a joy it is to actually maintain the product and come back to it and be on call for it. We can really testify to that as well. It's so much easier to kind of step away from these projects, come back, and be able to pick up right where you left off. They really are a delight to maintain. The performance is lights out. We're definitely all sleeping a little bit better, knowing the uptimes are pretty much guaranteed. The Lighthouse scores out of the box are darn near perfect. The ease of upgrading between versions, this is a particularly interesting one as a Drupal heavy shop. Moving from Drupal 6 to 7, 7 to 8, these were major expenses for some projects. Like I said, we started last year in V1 and then moved everything over to V2, and it was pretty much a 1 to 2 day turnaround time to go from V1 to V2, and for some pretty complex sites. And honestly, most of that time was spent, we weren't using Emotion at the time, we were using a different CSS and JS solution, so a lot of that was really just refactoring a lot of the CSS and JS, more so than moving from Gatsby V1 to V2. The other thing would be, feels like quote unquote writing in one language. This came from one of our developers, talking about how whether they're writing GraphQL or React or working with some APIs, it's all JSON syntax, it's all feels like JavaScript versus when we're working in Drupal and you're hopping between the front end and the back end, it really feels like you're speaking different languages, whereas here it's more like different dialects. Which has really empowered the front end devs, the ease of the learning curve, the plugins and documentation, which I can't say enough good things about how well documented Gatsby is. If I saw most hands went up when they asked who read the theming blog article, so obviously everyone in here has spent time in the docs and knows that they're really good. The component thinking has really brought together our design and front-end dev team, and tasks that were formerly red lines for the front-end devs are really now accomplishable, which in terms of advancement within the company and opportunities for growth, everyone is so fired up to tackle on new stuff. Generally, in Drupal or WordPress, if we tried to get more out of a front-end dev, it was like, ooh, I don't know, I don't think my brain really works that way. It's kind of outside my comfort zone. Now they're just chomping at the bit to do more stuff, which cue this quote, that we wouldn't be making these functional components if the tech didn't meet us halfway. I never imagined being able to do this level of work as a front-end dev and themer. And this came from someone that was really pretty much just working in the CSS layer of things, and now they're moving much more to the back end, and they're wanting to write lambdas, and it's like, who are you? It's great. So it really feels like we actually gained additional dev staff without hiring anybody. And of course, we would always love to promote from within and grow the internal team. And they're just excited for all the opportunities that they see for themselves for advancement. There's some serious stack envy going on. Other teams and partnerships that we've formed are really excited. They see this workflow and it's like, hey, we want to do more with them. We want to be in Gatsby, which has helped us solve a persistent kind of hiring and scale issue. It was really getting hard to find Drupal talent that also could, work in React, or a lot of the modern JavaScript front ends. Those were kind of two different people, and we're doing less and less work in Drupal, less and less work in WordPress. Now, being in this space and having access to the React and the JavaScript ecosystem, it's just, hiring has been a delight, actually. So that brings us to what we're solving next, the future. Technically speaking, we're just really staying focused on streamlining our workflow, trying to get more and more reusable with our components. Really excited about themes for that. So looking forward to seeing where that goes. And continuing to tackle new challenges with each project. The main one that we're looking at now is what to do between now and incremental builds. We have a couple pretty big deadlines that will happen between now and then, and just getting creative with how we do either content charting or split up the build processes. Yeah. So big picture, expanding the team, more collaborations, giving back and being active in the community, and really just staying curious. I think previously with the monolithic stacks, the idea of something coming to replace it was kind of scary because we were so heavily invested in this single thing. It was like, oh gosh, like, are we outdated? Do we have to learn this massive new infrastructure? But now, if one of the services we're using came along, we use, let's say, Contentful for some posts right now, and then if something else came along that we wanted to move to, it's not the end of the world. It's okay, we're swapping one piece for the other, kind of back to the stereo metaphor, which has us just saying yes to a lot more things, and that's really being felt throughout the team. I opened with the statement that Gatsby was a legit game changer for our team, and I think those of you that have spent a lot of time with it already know, but those that haven't, I submit that it can be equally as big of a game changer for yours. And that's pretty much that. I did want to leave some time for Q&A. Like I said, it was a heavy 2018. We were really immersed in it. So struggles, great moments. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to elaborate on any of that. Thank you. It's interesting I'll use this example with Contentful. You see a lot of the content modeling examples that they'll show at Contentful is really using the content models almost as like layouts, right? Versus defining a content model by being a blog post. You might have a layout that's like image text or hero or big quotes, stuff like that. We're realizing that most sites, it's a combination of content models that are your blog posts, some kind of content blocks, and then these sort of layout content models. Those ones we're noticing, hey, whether it's a slideshow, whether it's a big quote, whether it's like a jumbotron, these things are pretty similar from site to site. So we have a whole suite of like layout components that are basically connected to Contentful content models that are pretty much drop-ins. And then we have the Contentful content models exportable. So we import those into the new space, and a whole bunch of blocks that previously we were referencing through like a repeatable sort of section field in Contentful. We're looking a little bit more into the rich text and how it fits into there. But like I said, there's about a dozen really impressive, fully functional like React component layout modules that we reuse from site to site, and it's been great. As in terms of solving like basic pages and for marketers, it's really, really powerful. We tried a lot, actually. There were so many options out there, and we felt like, okay, the only really way to know is just to jump in. We did style JSX, we did regular style components, we did Glamour, CSS modules, and it was actually snooping around in Jason's GitHub, Gatsby swag store, and seeing Emotion, and just really kind of falling in love with that approach. And it was amazing, actually, because Emotion, you can write your syntax like Glamour. You can also, have the CSS just in a variable, or you can do style components approach. So moving over to Emotion, if you're in any one of those, was actually the quickest path, because we just moved some of them over and kept everything in Glamour syntax, like as props on the actual components, and then got it over to Emotion, got rid of Glamour, and then went through like an actual like styled components refactor. That was some of the more lengthy, time-consuming stuff in those V1 to V2 ports, was moving to styled component approach. That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, we're actually trying to work on a way to standardize that a bit better. It's kind of just like internal like gists and stuff like that right now. But yeah, we would love a way to really assure that and maybe put some like versioning on it. There's a few of them that we feel like are ready for that. We'll build them for a particular project, and then it's like, oh, hey, this is a perfect use case for that, header component. And then, oh, hey, what if we added a prop to it that we could adjust how it lays out? And I feel like once we get a few that are just really rock solid, trying to do that would be a pretty great way to go.